So good morning everyone. I will like to demonstrate about the mandible. The mandible or the lower jaw. This is the largest and the strongest bone of the face. Is develops from the first pharyngeal arch. Is develops from the first pharyngeal arch. It is a horseshoe-shaped bone which lodges our teeth. It consists of a pair of the rami which projects upward from the posterior ends of the body and provide attachment to the muscles. Each half of the body it consists of an outer surface, inner surface, upper surface, and lower borders. Then the outer surface consists of a symphysis. The outer surface consists of a symphysis menti. The symphysis menti is a line in which the right and the left halves of the bone meet with each other. It is marked by a fan teres line. This is the symphysis menti. This is the mental protuberance. Mental to protuberance is a median triangular projecting from the lower parts of the midline. The inferior lateral angle of the mental tubercle from the mental tubercles. Mental protuberance from the mental tubercles. So these are the mental tubercles. This is mental protuberance, mental tubercles. Then the mental foramen. These are the two mental foramen. These are the mental foramen which lies just below the interval between the premolar tooth. Then this is an oblique line. This is the oblique line on the outer surface. This oblique line is a continuation of the sharp anterior border of the ramus of the mandible. Runs downward and forward towards the mental foramen. Then the incisive fossa. Is a depression that lies just below the incisor teeth. Is known as incisive fossa. This is the incisive fossa. Then about the inner surface. In the inner surface there is a mylohyoid line. This is the mylohyoid line. This is the mylohyoid line. This one. Then this mylohyoid line is a prominent trace that runs obliquely downward and forward from below the third molar tooth to the median area below the genial tubercles. These are the genial tubercles. Upper and lower genial tubercles. This runs towards the genial tubercles. So below the mylohyoid line, the surface is slightly hollowed out. This surface is slightly hollowed out. This surface is slightly hollowed out from the submandibular fossa, which lodges the submandibular gland, and above the mylohyoid line is the sublingual fossa, which lodges the sublingual gland. This is the sublingual gland. Lodges this area. This is the sublingual gland. This is the submandibular fossa. Then it consists of the upper or alveolar borders near the socket for the tooth, and the lower border for the mandible is also called the base. Near the midline, the base shows an oval depression. There is an oval depression known as digastric fossa. This is the digastric fossa at the base. There is a depression known as digastric fossa. Symphysis menti, mental protuberance, mental tubercles, and digastric fossa. Now about the ramus of the mandible. This ramus is quadrangular in shape and consists of a two surface, lateral surface and a medial surface, and four borders: upper border, lower border, anterior border, and posterior border. Then on the medial surface presents the following features. On the medial surface there is a mandibular foramen. This is the mandibular foramen. Then on the medial surface there is mandibular foramen. The mandibular foramen lies a little above the center of the ramus at the level of the occlusal surface of the teeth. It leads into this mandibular foramen leads into the mandibular canal, and which leads to the mandibular canal, which descends in the body of the mandible and opens into this a mental foramen. Then the anterior margin of this mandibular foramen is marked by a sharpened projection. This is known as a lingula. There is a sharpened projection. See, this sharpened projection is called the lingula. This sharpened projection is called the lingula. Then below the mylohyoid line, there is a mylohyoid groove. Just below the mandibular foramen, there is a mylohyoid groove. Then the upper border of the ramus is thin. This upper border of the ramus is thin and is curved downward, forming the mandibular notch. Ramus upper border is thin and curved downward, forming the mandibular notch. Then this is the coronoid process. This is the condylar process. The coronoid process is flattened triangular, projected from the anterior superior part of the ramus. This is the condylar process. This is a strong forward projection from the posterior superior part of the ramus and is consists of an head and neck, which is broken in our case. Then the head is covered by a fibrocartilage and articulated the temporal bone from the temporomandibular joint. And on the neck, there is a depression is present on the condylar process. This is known as the pterygoid phobia. And then the attachments of the mandible. Then this oblique line, this oblique line which is located on the lateral side of the body gives origin to the buccinator muscle. This oblique line gives origin to the buccinator muscle. It only gives origin to the buccinator muscle. And in front of this origin, of the buccinator, then the depressor labii inferioris and depressor anguli oris. So this is the origin of the buccinator. This is the mental foramen. Two muscles originated from this is the depressor labii inferioris. And depressor anguli oris. Depressor labii inferioris and depressor anguli oris arises from the oblique line below the mental foramen. Depressor labii inferioris and depressor anguli oris. Then incisive fossa gives origin to the mentalis and mentalis slips of the orbicularis oris. This gives to origin to the mentalis and mental slips of the orbicularis oris. So oblique line gives origin to the buccinator. Then below the mental foramen in this oblique line gives origin to the depressor labii inferioris and depressor anguli oris. This leads to the mentalis and the mental slips of the orbicularis oris. Then the mylohyoid, this mylohyoid line gives origin to the mylohyoid muscle. Then the superior constrictor muscle of the pharynx arises from an area above the posterior end of the mylohyoid line. So from here the superior constrictor muscle here arises. In the mylohyoid. Then the pterygomandibular refuge attaches immediately behind the third molar in continuation with the superior constrictor. So in continuation with the superior constrictor, pterygomandibular refuge arises. Pterygomandibular refuge also arises. Then the upper genial tubercle. And the lower genial tubercle. The upper genial tubercle gives origin to the genioglossus while the lower genial tubercle give attachment to the geniohyoid, genioglossus and geniohyoid. From the digastric fossa arises the anterior belly of digastric. Deep cervical layer, investing layer is attached to the whole length of the lower end of the mandible, and the platysma is inserted into its lower border. While the attachments, the platysma is attached. So the platysma is attached into the lower border, whole lateral surface of the ramus, provide attachment to the masseter muscle. So this is oblique line is the vaccinator. Here give origin to the depressor levi inferioris and depressor anguli oris, mentalis and mental slopes of the orbicularis oris, anterior belly of digastric. Genioglossus and geniohyoid. Mylohyoid muscle arises from this superior constrictor muscle and pterygomandibular raphe. It gives insertion to this. Here the buccinator is attached. Masseter is inserted. Masseter is inserted. Then this lingula, spinomandibular ligament is attached to the lingula. Spinomandibular ligament is attached to the lingula. Then about the medial pterygoid muscle, the medial pterygoid muscle is inserted on the medial surface of the ramus. So here the medial pterygoid muscle is attached. Then the medial pterygoid muscle is attached, inserted on the medial surface of the ramus on the roughened area below and behind the mylohyoid groove. The medial pterygoid muscle is attached here. So here the masseter muscle is attached, inserted, medial pterygoid. Then the temporalis muscle is attached into the apex and medial surface of the coronoid. The temporalis muscle is attached to the apex and medial surface of the coronoid process. So here the temporalis muscle is attached. The lateral pterygoid muscle is attached on the pterygoid fovea. Lateral pterygoid. So the structures in foraminas and relations of the nerve and vessels. So what is the mental foramen transmit the mental nerve and vessels? The mental foramen transmit the mental nerve and vessels. Mental nerve and vessels. While the inferior alveolar nerve passes nerve and vessels, enters the mandibular canal through the mandibular foramen and runs downward within the canal. And inferior alveolar branch is mental nerve and vessels passes through it. Inferior alveolar nerve, mental nerve and vessels. Then the mylohyoid nerve and vessels lies in the mylohyoid groove. So in this mylohyoid groove, the mylohyoid nerve and vessels. The lingual nerve is related to the medial surface of the ramus in front of the mylohyoid groove. So in front of the mylohyoid groove is the lingual nerve. Inferior alveolar nerve, mylohyoid nerve and vessels, lingual nerve. In front of the mylohyoid groove is the lingual nerve. The lingual nerve, inferior alveolar nerve. So once again is the inferior alveolar nerve passes through this mandibular foramen, leads into the mandibular canal, mylohyoid nerve and vessels, lingual nerve. Then the area above and behind the mandibular foramen is related to the inferior alveolar nerve and vessels and to the maxillary artery. The masseteric nerve passes through the mandibular notch. The masseteric nerve and vessel. The masseteric nerve and vessels passes through the mandibular notch. The masseteric nerve and vessel passes through the mandibular notch. The auriculotemporal nerve is related to the medial side of the neck of the mandible. Through this medial side, auriculotemporal nerve is related to the medial side of the neck of the mandible. So the mandible is the second bone next to the clavicle to ossify in the center. Then the age changes in the mandible. According to this mental foramen, the two halves of the mandible fuses during the first year of life. At the birth, the mental foramen opens below the sockets for the first two deciduous teeth near the lower border, and the angle is obtuse 140 degree. Then in the adults, the mental foramen opens midway between the upper and lower border, and the angle is about 110 to 120 degrees, and is 140 degrees again becomes almost vertical. Then the teeth falls off, and this mental foramen then falls near to the upper jaw, and the angle again become obtuse. Thank you for watching my video.